Are we going to see a fourth stimulus, or do you think you're going to wait and see how the first three are working?
To people ask me, I remind them that we have no money. We have no rainy day account. We have no savings account. The $3 trillion that we've already passed out is imaginary money. It's being borrowed basically from China. So the irony is we got the virus from China, and now we're going to be more dependent by borrowing more money from China. The only thing that recovers our economy is opening the economy. It's not a lack of money. It's a lack of commerce. If you let people have commerce, if you let them trade, if you take them out from forcible home arrest, our economy will recover. But if you keep everybody under home arrest and say you cannot practice your business, you cannot sell your goods, there will continue to be economic calamity. And all these blue state governors who don't want to open their state, now they're clamoring for federal money to bail them out because no state revenue's coming in.
Senator,
we don't have any money.
What could be more straightforward than what Rand Paul is saying? And yet it feels like Rand Paul here is a breath of fresh air. You know this. I've always thought that Senator Paul was a guy who does believe what he says. I mean, he is a believer in the ideology of limited government and liberty. I wouldn't even call it libertarianism, because Rand Paul is not really a classic libertarian in some ways, but an ideology focused on liberty and limited government. I think Rand Paul is a believer. I've always had not a personal soft spot for the guy, but I feel like he's been. Because, I don't know him. I've only interviewed him a couple of times. And in interviews, I'm going to say, he's kind of like, well, it sound like I'm a little bored. And, he's not really that. He doesn't really love talking to the media. I think he likes TV. I don't think he really loves doing radio. But he seems to me like a principled politician. Now, that's not the same thing as saying someone's perfectly principled. It just means that for a politician, I think that Rand Paul does stick to what he believes for the most part. And that's impressive to me, or at least it's noteworthy to me. But look, he's saying there is no restoring the economy without getting back there is no restoring the economy without pulling back on these lockdowns. There's no way we can do it. There's nothing that we can do that will that will restore the economy unless we pull back the lockdowns. And that then gets me to, I had a very interesting exchange on Twitter. So it's public. So I'm not, betraying any kind of confidence or anything. I mean, I never would. But I had an interesting back and forth with somebody who is he is a guy who founded a very large, I believe it was a genetic research company. But his name is Balaji Srinivasan. And I know about this guy, I think it's actually pronounced Balaji. We have a mutual friend told me this guy is really smart, and he's a little bit more of he doesn't believe that we should have the country locked down forever, and he understands the pain that people are feeling right now, but he's a pretty pro-lockdown guy. And so we had this exchange I wanted to share with you about the different, when you deal with someone on this issue who it seems is actually smart from the other side. Here's kind of how this goes. You had Bethany Mandel, who some of you know is a conservative author and writer, and she wrote the following. And this is an exchange that all happened. I thought this is worth sharing with you. She wrote, "You can call me a grandma killer. I'm not sacrificing my home, food on the table, all of her docs and dentists, every form of pleasure, museums, zoos, restaurants, all my kids' teachers, in order to make other people comfortable. If you want to stay locked down, do. I'm not." And then she wrote, "Doesn't mean it won't be done responsibly, but I am done. I feel lied to about the terms of this lockdown, and I regret ever trusting that it would be done responsibly." I think she's right. I mean, I think that's an appropriate response to the lockdown response. I think that this is well within where we should be, given what we've been put through as a country at this point and what they've said to us. Now, this gentleman, Mr. Balaji, came forward and look, this is where it's so rare to find someone on the other side. So someone who's pro lockdown, who's smart and not a shrill screaming, you want to kill grandma maniac. So this is why I wanted to share this with you, because I keep having people on the show who are generally speaking, with me and being skeptical that the response was necessary of the national lockdown, at least, and that, there's no politics involved in this with the anti-Trump side. But here's how the other side approaches it. Those who are trying to at least engage, whether you agree with this or not, at least they're trying to engage. I wish people ask me often, why don't you have liberals on the show disagree with you? Because it just escalates. And if you have on radio people who all of a sudden are shouting or trying to talk over each other, it's just bad. It's bad. And also, it's you have limited time and to have a debate format in radio, especially if you're going to have the host. I mean, I determine what the time is, right? I determine how much people get to speak on this show. Like radio, the host of a radio show is the king of the kingdom. And so to have somebody else on, if you're going to debate them, this is why, like, one of the cheapest things is when, they love to, some hosts love to do this. They'll take a call from someone who's clearly, a conservative will take a call from a host who's a guest, rather, who's clearly an idiot and not actually up for the debate of challenging them, and just yell at them and call them an idiot on TV. This is a little bit like the conservative radio equivalent of somebody who wants to watch those videos of, like, the Jackass guys back in the day who would, you remember those guys, Mark, who would, like, light M80s in their underwear and do crazy stuff like that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course. The Jackass guys.
Yeah, the Jackass guys. I mean, you kind of watch it, but, it's really not, and just having somebody on air and you're going, you're an idiot, you're dumb, yelling at people and being all, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody, and it's cheap. It's cheap theater. So this guy, Balaji, I mean, I can't get him to join me on, well, actually, you know what? I'll ask if he'll join me on radio. I feel like he'd say no, but I'll ask him if he'll join me on radio. We'll see. But he said, one problem with this logic, and this is in response to Bethany, one problem with this logic is that the economy is other people. So if older people stay home, along with millions of cautious people, plus many tourists and business travelers, you don't actually get the economy back. Other countries have contained the virus. It's doable. So he's saying we need to get to full-on containment, and then we end the lockdowns. I think that that's almost impossible, and if we wait that long, the economy will be dead. But this is actually where the debate is among serious people. So I responded to him and I said, when people see lots of folks who are low risk, under 50, going about their daily lives just fine, other people will become less scared and economic activity will grow over time. Essentially, let people who are at low risk and who are willing to take that risk engage in more activity, and not just economic activity, engage in more of day-to-day life. Okay. Balaji wrote back to me, over 50s are 30% of the population and significantly more of the net worth. If you add in folks with pre-existing conditions, a big chunk of the U.S., white-collar folks, foreign tourists, that's a big chunk of the economy, I guess we'll see. Now, see, notice that's a signal when you're in this world of fighting. This guy's a blue check with a pretty big following. I'm a blue check with a big following or pretty big following, whatever, reasonably considerable following on Twitter. And but when someone says something like, I guess we'll see, oh, you mean they actually want to have an exchange of ideas because they know they don't know. One of my recurring mantras here on the show, my recurring themes, some of you may not like the mantra term, right? But some of the recurring themes that we have are things like no one can predict the future, and people who tell you they can are lying to you. Thinking that their analysis may be good about the future is one thing, but if they tell you that they can see the future, they're lying to you. So the fact that he just said, I guess we'll see, meant, okay, well, now here's someone, unlike the, you want to kill grandma. You have so much of that. You want grandma to die. It's usually grandma, too, not grandpa. I think that's very interesting. But it's always you want grandma to die. That's become the line, which is a horrible and stupid thing to say. I mean, I love my grandparents very much. Unfortunately, they've all passed a long time ago. But this is just when people are trying to shut others down through a loud moral blackmail. So to his points, though, here about how over 50s are 30% of the population, that's a fair point. And that there's a lot of wealth concentrated in the over 50s as well. Okay, but let's now look at this for a second. If people are returning to work who are at low risk and therefore exposing themselves, many of them already have. I mean, I think it's 50-50 I have antibodies, and that's just a guess. I don't know. I think it's 50-50 given the situation that I was in here in New York during the maximum spread of the disease. A lot of people under 50 already have antibodies. If they return to work, they will be possibly exposed, but then they will get antibodies. Maybe they'll get sick for a week or two, and a very, very small percentage might end up in the hospital and be in really bad shape, but it's a very small percentage. But that means more and more people as we're in the reopening, we'll have antibodies, which means that the vectors, we start getting to this herd immunity concept, the vectors for the spread of the disease are fewer. And then you have people who perhaps are in their 50s and maybe even going up in their 60s who start to feel more comfortable because it's less likely that the younger people that are already out there and working, it's less likely that they'll be at high risk of contracting the disease from them. And you see there's a snowball effect. I would also point out that we already have essential workers who are going out and doing their jobs. So we've taken a segment of the economy and said, well, that part of the economy is going to still go. It's not like we're in a true lockdown. And there are some risks to those essential workers and to people that are coming into contact with them, their family. This is how we get to the continued spread of this disease, even though we're all supposed to be on lockdown. But see, my point is if we add low risk workers into the mix here to the essential workers, we're expanding the economy. We're returning and getting closer to normal. And then he gave me a graph of the percentage of, age percentage, which was just a helpful data point, and we clarified that. And then I said, as for waiting until new infections are zero for reopen, this is where I have a disagreement with Mr. Balaji. 66% of New York hospital admissions, as we talked about here earlier in the show, were from people locked away in their homes. The virus is still spreading, and the virus is still going up in many places across the country. So unless people believe that we're going to go to an even more extreme lockdown phase than what we're already in, which to me just sounds completely insane, we're never going to get to full containment of the disease under our current projections. A country this size, of this many people, we have to, unless we're going to say there's no such thing as essential workers anymore, no one, unless you work in unless you work in a hospital and you're trying to treat COVID patients, everyone just stay home and we're just going to live on the food you got in your fridge for a week or two or a month. Now, a lot of people would say, Buck, people don't have food. I know. That's why it's crazy. You can't do this, right? You can't actually completely freeze the economy or people literally will go hungry and starve. So, that's why that's what I got to do. And then I also said to him, docs I've spoken to say with velocity and scope of, I asked him about your thoughts on test and trace. And he said, docs I've spoken to about velocity and scope of existing spread and deploying tracers across the country to hotspots. This is going to be minimally helpful. I'm going to be right on this one. This test and trace theory, this is absurd. This is not going to work. People that are saying it's going to work don't know what they're talking about. We also have many empty testing facilities, I wrote, all over the country already. And with asymptomatic spread, it seems unless we're going to force everyone to get tested every 2 weeks, the value of a national testing surge will be limited. This is, and then we had a nice, I said, thank you for your time. He said, thank you for your time. We had a kind of a nice close. And so, but this is, if you really want to have a debate with somebody about what's going on, this is where it is. Can we get to the point where we fully control this virus and there's almost no risk of going outside? And can we do that without destroying the economy and ruining our society? I say no. Some people say yes, and they'll point to particularly other countries that they say have controlled the virus very, very well so far, Australia being one of them. But Australia, remember, they're on the flip of us in terms of their seasons. On the flip side, I'm wondering how well they'll do this summer. And also some countries have a much less dense population. And, there's just certain things about America that it's going to make it very hard to fully control the disease. And we're losing, I haven't even mentioned to you yet because I got all fired up about this, but we've got 3.2 million people who have filed for unemployment for the first time last week. That brings the total number of jobs lost during the coronavirus crisis to 33.5 million. We are heading to 40, maybe 50 million lost jobs from this. Now, I saw this in the Wall Street Journal. I believe it was the Wall Street Journal. It was a poll that said 77% of laid off workers think that they will return to their old job after the stay-at-home orders. Almost, we're getting close to 80% of people think they're just going to take their old job. This is where I have to say, I hope they're right. I am pretty confident they are wrong. The costs that have been that have mounted for these businesses, and also what the businesses will be able to operate at even when the lockdowns end. It's going to be a very meager income stream for a lot of businesses once they open their doors. This is going to be a long, drawn-out, phased-in process, no matter what. And that's if they make the right decisions and stop saying, "Oh, the second wave, and we're all going to die." And if they take the right path here, it's still going to be painful. It's still going to be difficult. So I don't think that 80% or so of these of people who think this, I don't think they're correct. I think that there are going to be a lot of lost jobs and jobs that aren't coming back because there are industries that won't be able to sustain, even when they reopen, won't be able to sustain the workforce that they once did. What do we do with that? But for the forever lockdown crowd, we are not South Korea. We are not Australia. We are not Japan. And no one can even figure out what they've done that we haven't done that would let us even try to get to the level of virus control that so far they've had. I mean, people will say test and trace, but that doesn't make any sense. Asymptomatic spread is 50% of the disease. You're going to test and trace 330 million people? Think about this. Think about the infrastructure and the resources and the cost of even trying to do this. It's just not even going to. Meanwhile, we're getting 300,000 infections a day. 1/10% of people are actually getting hospitalized and or dying from this, which means you're getting every day, every few days, 1 million more people who are going to end up with antibodies. Every few days, 1 million more people who are going to end up with antibodies. I mean, it seems like we're just heading toward a herd immunity. We just won't talk about it that way because we want to pretend that we can just save lives across the board without the economic costs. This is all very complicated. I mean, I'll admit that. It's all very tough. And as Mr. Balaji says, we'll see. All right, I got some good news to share with all of you. We talked about the story of Texas stylist Shelley Luthor, and who said that feeding her children was not selfish, and that the people who worked for her, who were going hungry themselves so they could feed their children, and they wanted to go back and start styling people's hair again, they were not being selfish by doing their jobs. Well, darn it, Texas is still Texas, it turns out. The Supreme Court of Texas has decided to order the immediate release of jailed Texas salon owner Shelley Luthor. She was sentenced to a week in prison by a judge who really did not do himself any favors in the way that whole thing came out. And she now has a GoFundMe page that has raised $500,000 for her. Yeah. Still America, my friend. Still Texas, for sure. She is released now. She has been released from prison. She's not going to spend 7 days there. And these judges in the Texas Supreme Court said that the punishment was excessive and the jailing was unnecessary. This is all from the local affiliate down in Dallas. No Texan, quote, should face imprisonment for peacefully resisting an order that temporarily closed a lawful business and drastically limited their ability to provide for their family through no fault of their own. God bless Texas, my friends, doing the right thing, showing the country how it's done here. And God bless these judges for making the right call. That's what we like to see. It does feel like America after all, doesn't it? All right, Team Bucks, special treat today. And I've been trying to get this guy on the show for a while, but, he's got beautiful weather. He's got to go out and surf sometimes. He's got his own fantastic 3-hour radio show on a wonderful station in San Diego that we now share, KFMB. So, the best San Diego station that's out there. And he's doing a great show. He's also on The First, which is on Pluto TV, where you can all see me, and you can see Jesse Kelly. You can see Mike Slater, the one and only Mike Slater of The Mike Slater Show. My friend, finally, I'm glad that our people were able to get through to your people.
Yeah, right. Like I have people. Welcome to my kitchen, Buck.
Yeah, it's quite it's funny because your kitchen is like twice the size of my New York apartment, which is yet again another reason why I should be moving from New York City right away. Let's talk about Cali first. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think of you often. I'm not kidding, because I think, other than maybe like an Iowa meatpacking plant, you might be in the worst place in the country right now. Literally, not only New York City, but you're like I can see behind you. You're like in the densest part of New York City. What in the world? Like, can you go outside? Like, what are you doing?
I can walk my dog through Times Square in less than 3 minutes from where I am on foot. That's how close I am to the epicenter. And by the way, Times Square, that area, was the biggest outbreak of any zip code in Manhattan of the 5 boroughs was Times Square. So basically, I mean, I live next to like the most hot zone in Manhattan, although there's other bigger hot zones in the 5 boroughs. And yeah, it's the most densely packed part of the whole city. And during the maximum spread of the virus, I was on the subway because I do 2 radio shows, as I think you may know. I was on the subway 4 times a day. And it's one of the 3 most crowded subway lines. So to your question about whether I was at high risk of acquiring this, it's like I was running an experiment saying, hey, guys, I really want to get COVID-19. That's what I was doing accidentally. But you're out there in sunny California. So tell me this. You know, people have been, honestly, a lot of people have been somewhat befuddled, although I think your weather, your inherent social distancing of being in a car versus being in mass transportation. And I'd also say you're kind of generally healthier lifestyle. I mean, I know you guys have like pet therapists and do a lot of like yoga in the sun, but yoga in the sun is good for you. And it's certainly less likely to get COVID-19 than you would being indoors on a crowded subway. So how is California doing right now? Gavin Newsom saying that they may actually open up stores, what, next week?
I think Friday's the plan. Now, there's a whole drama there because classic Gavin Newsom, classic politician, is just like, I think yesterday or Tuesday, he said, we're going to open up stores on Friday, and we'll tell you which stores on Thursday. And it's like, well, geez, Gavin, like if you're a business owner, you can't just be like, snap your fingers and open up 12 hours later. We need a little more advice. So we don't even know yet exactly what the details are on who's going to be allowed to open and whatnot. But I think San Diego in particular has done a really good job. I mean, our healthcare capacity, we're like way under the healthcare capacity line. People have done a good job kind of staying put, but I also think people are ready to get back out there and get back out to the beach.
Are your beaches open right now? I mean, I know that near you, what is it, La Jolla? Is that where one of the places where they have those really beautiful beaches? I mean, if I were out there visiting Shea Slater, could I go to the beaches of La Jolla, or are they shut down?
I don't even know if Buck Sexton could afford a house on the beach.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Not even close. Dude, I live in a 1-bedroom, man. Are you kidding me? Producer Mark needs to get me a guest bed. He actually has a real home.
Yeah, far away from the water. But yeah, no, you can go. You know, you got to move. You got to be moving. You can't sit down, all that stuff. But what's encouraging is our sheriff's actually done a pretty good job, even though he's pretty questionable on a lot of things. And the Riverside County, which is just north of San Diego County, he just put out with a statement yesterday, I think, saying he's not going to turn Riverside County into a police state. He's not going to enforce, businesses who aren't doing whatever they're supposed to do properly. He's going to trust the people to make the right decision. And that has to be the proper posture moving forward. I know you've talked about the salon owner out in Dallas.
Luthor.
But 7 days in jail. Like, what are we talking about?
Well, you know, they've ordered her released. They've ordered her released.
Oh, did they?
Today? Yes.
Thank goodness. Insanity. Like, what is that? What is the point of that? What are we even trying to prove with moves like that? Luckily, our law enforcement here is doing a pretty good job. And Orange County, so that was a couple of days ago, Gavin Newsom ordered Orange County beaches closed as like a punitive measure. Like, Orange County people, you didn't social distance enough, so I'm going to order just your beaches closed. But again, checks and balances. The local sheriff in Orange County said, listen, I'm not going to enforce that stuff. You can go on the beach if you want at different times. And they're not cracking down on it like Gavin Newsom would want, at least. And that's good. People are being pretty sensible.
I just feel like that's also, it's so much more American to have people in positions of authority on issues like this say, hey, guys, well, I'm going to trust you all to be responsible. And I don't really even have, I mean, the legal authority for some of this stuff is questionable at best. But they're just saying, look, I mean, this is a public information campaign, not a demand at gunpoint campaign to do everything they say, especially given how much this stuff has been shifting in recent weeks where, you know, what's safe, what's not, where the information is actually taking us. Governor Newsom, it sounds like he hasn't been, I mean, Cuomo has now gotten the Buckster upset with a lot of the stuff that he's done. I mean, he's made some horrific decisions, and notably the stuff on nursing homes is just, I can't believe the incompetence. Has Newsom, I'm thinking that the Democrats are going to have to backfill somebody for Biden. And it's not, I don't mean in a VP sense. I mean, they're going to just say, it's not going to be Biden. We've been hearing this about Cuomo for a while. Newsom, people also have been talking about a little bit. Is he is he coming out of this whole situation looking pretty good? Maybe because California just is inherently a better off state to handle this because of what I said, the weather and the things that you all know about. But how's Newsom doing? What's the report?
Yeah, so first of all, Newsom's slick, right? And he's pretty shady, but he's the slick politician, younger, kind of hip, cool. People love him, just pre-pandemic. People fall for his thing. You know what I mean? He's got a kind of slickster.
He is smooth. I would buy a vehicle or a gently used kitchen appliance from him, no question.
That's what I'm getting at. So it's worked for a long time. And listen, this is a conservative who has no love for Gavin Newsom. I think he's done a pretty good job. I'm giving a lot of grace. The name of the game for me this whole time has been grace to everybody, the politicians, to your neighbor, to everyone, because like you said, no one really knows what's going on. We're starting to get a little better handle, but there's still so many unknowns. So a lot of these politicians I've been giving a lot of grace to, but Gavin Newsom, I think, has done a pretty good job. Again, punitively shutting down the beach. Maybe he's holding on to power a little longer than he should. I think he needs to loosen the reins a little bit, but it looks like he is, as you talked about, kind of opening up businesses. I think he's done an okay job. Now, the one big thing that we're going to have to start getting some answers for is he spent $1 billion on masks from China. And I know speed was important, so you got to kind of balance that out when, everyone is in full panic mode. But now we're getting reports that masks across the country from China aren't even close to the N95 standards. It's like 15% of what the actual standard is. So one day we're going to find out the quality of these masks that he bought for $1 billion. And I'm sure it's going to be 10 times the cost of what the masks normally are. But he had to act fast, and we'll see. But that's the one kind of big glaring thing that Gavin Newsom's done maybe wrong.
I mean, look, that's from a conservative point of view, that's a pretty strong report card. I'm seeing here I'm seeing here that California, Los Angeles has over 28,000. Los Angeles County has 28,000. I know you're in San Diego, but 28,000 confirmed cases, about 1,300 deaths. California is a fraction overall. What is it? 54,000 confirmed cases for the whole state. And now that's confirmed cases with testing, right? That's not taking into account the serology extrapolation of how many people have antibodies to this. But you guys are at a fraction of the deaths that we have here in New York. You have a larger population. It feels like California, as much as the politics of it would dictate it opening much more slowly, it looks like you guys are coming out of this thing okay. Am I missing something?
No, it's pretty wild. And what's frustrating in the name of unknowns is we may never know why. We did a segment a while back about super spreaders and how a city can do all the things right, but one super spreader, I think in South Korea, he was known as case 31 or 33 or something like that. One super spreader can sneeze on a doorknob and all these people get it and it spreads like crazy. And people are going to look at all different areas of the country and around the world, and they're going to try to come up with reasons. Be like, the Italians kiss on the cheeks, right? Or this country doesn't have good health care. Or people are going to try to find race angles or socioeconomic angles or whatever. People are always going to try to explain it. And honestly, it's frustrating because it could just be New York. I mean, New York's super dense, so that's kind of its own thing. But people be like, there was just a couple super spreaders, and it just spread it way more. And there's really no answer. It just kind of happened that way. Well, maybe in California, there weren't a lot of super spreaders.
New York is, in a sense, the super spreader because the evidence that they're pointing to today on the front pages of a bunch of newspapers is that New York cases, we essentially created this, the petri dish of New York was overflowing, and then travel from New York, once it had spread all over here to the rest of the country, seeded outbreaks in Louisiana, like for Mardi Gras, for example, seeded outbreaks in Florida, in Michigan, in places all across the country. So one place, you're talking about it on an individual level where one human being could end up being responsible for it. And there was I think there was also a case in South Korea, somebody who went to a church. Is that the same? And then this might be a different one. Went to a church and 100 people in the church ended up getting infected somehow. I mean, for whatever.
Yeah. So what kind of grand conclusions can you make about that area in South Korea? About their socioeconomic levels or culture or whatever, when it was just someone who went to church and sneezed a couple times.
What do you think?
So it's hard to make conclusive statements.
What do you think of Governor Pritzker of Illinois saying, no church until there's a vaccine? I think people were like, what? settle down, chubby Beelzebub. Like, what are you doing?
There's a couple power trips out there that we're seeing, right? So the Harvard judge from in Texas that we were just talking about, like, that's a power trip move, man, to put that guy for seven days, put that one by. This is another power trip move, right? Like, if other businesses can have people keep their distance, then why couldn't a church also have people keep their distance? That makes no sense. Why single out churches? I don't get that.
I think that there's a hostility among people who love power of the state to the, they always talk about the separation of church and state when they want to bash the church. And now all of a sudden, when the state has taken on all this power for itself, churches are the whatever essential is, churches are the opposite of essential to these people.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so this is good. We need to keep an eye out for the Cincinnatus. So who are the Cincinnatus out there who are going to
Are you referring to the Roman general who was? Is this a Roman general called out of retirement to save the republic thing? Is that what we're going for? Look at you.
The whole point of his story, as you know, is he gave the power back, right?
Yeah.
So who are the governors who are going to give this power back once they've had a bloodlust taste for it, in a way that they haven't had in their careers? Certainly, will they give it back to the people?
Look, the
guy you talked about, it looks like no, he's not.
And let me just remind everybody, we're talking to Mike Slater, who is the host of the Mike Slater Show, KFMB, the greatest radio station in San Diego County, which I'm also on. So the two of us are on it, which clearly makes it the best radio station
by the way,
anywhere.
Like for people who don't know, I have been riding your coattails for like 10 years now, I think. I think everywhere you go, I end up following you. So I appreciate that.
Well, I was going to tell you, I mean, now I'm jumping to the head. I was going to say, we at the First on Pluto TV have managed to put together, you have like two of the nicest, funniest, best people on radio with Jesse Kelly and Mike Slater. And, I'm just like, everybody should be watching this. Everybody should listen to this lineup. I mean, legitimately, for those of you who don't know, who listen to my show, Mike Slater is one of the nicest people. It has been since he started the Blaze. He's actually so nice that at first I was like, is he really this nice? Turns out he actually is. He's that good of a guy. Yeah, that's right. I'm throwing it all your way now. How are you handling it? How about that, buddy? Nicest guy on radio, very talented, great show, The Mike Slater Show. You should all be checking out and listening. He has a podcast, too. You can listen to the Mike Slater podcast. Let me ask you this. When do you think, are we breaking the dam here? Are we breaking the dam in the reopen nationally, or is this going to be a grind-it out, state-by-state, phase-up, phase-down fight? What are you seeing?
Okay, yeah, here's what I think. And who knows, right? I've always thought for the last week or so, that it's going to be kind of like a bell curve, and people are going to be able to make up their own minds, and people are going to go into their own categories. How much time do we have? Do I have 2 minutes to explain this?
About a minute.
Can I do this in 2 minutes?
You got a minute. I can only give you a minute because we got a station break.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So in technology adaptation, there are people who buy the first iPhone as soon as it comes out, and then there's a certain percentage of people who kind of wait a little while, and then there's a certain percentage of people who wait until they really need one, and then there's a certain percentage of people who don't buy an iPhone until there's no more flip phones. And it's a bell curve. Early adapters, you can Google that and learn more. I think that's the same thing here. I think a very small percentage of people want to go out to concerts now. A little bit more people are like, I'm going to wait a week or so. And then you have me who's like, I'm going to kind of wait like a month. I got a 2-month-old here. I don't want to push anything. I'll wait like a month. And then you have some people who rightfully are like, I'm not really going to go anywhere for a while because I have health issues or I'm older or whatever. So I think it's like a natural bell curve distribution of when people are going to go. And people are going to make up their own minds based off the information we have. We don't need Gavin Newsom or any governor telling you are allowed, you're not allowed, you can't. I think people are adult and wise enough to do that by themselves.
If I come out to San Diego so we can hang out with the fine people in the audience of KFMB, can you also teach me to surf?
I'm not the best surfer, but I can definitely treat you to a green smoothie. Maybe that's the California. A kale smoothie is what's keeping us healthy out here. Maybe that's it.
All right, I'll take it. Mike Slater, everybody. Check out the Mike Slater Show.
They're not good. They're very overrated.
We got Mike Slater's show. He's on, what time Eastern time are you on KFMB?
Noon to 3 Pacific, so 3 to 6 Eastern time.
3 to 6 Eastern time. Check him out. And Mr. Slater, great to talk to you, sir. You stay safe out there. God bless you and yours. We'll talk soon.
You're the man, brother. Appreciate you.
Man, it was great to talk to Mike Slater. Although I gotta say, producer Mark, I thought he was gonna be like, dude, I've been surfing. Like he seems like he could be in Point Break with Keanu Reeves, but he's actually not a surfer.
I mean, not everyone who lives in San Diego surfs. You know that, right?
I guess. But he is, what I said before, I really mean that. I want to reiterate it. He's one of the nicest, best dudes in the radio business, which is full of a lot of not nice people who are terrible. Actually, Mike Slater and Jesse Kelly are like two guys that you'd want to be friends with, and you'd want as neighbors. You'd want them coaching your kid's little league team or football team. They're just great dudes, and so it's an honor, honestly, to be with them on Pluto TV. The first, along with Dana Lash, who's a longtime friend and colleague, was fantastic. So anyway, if you haven't checked out that content, please do. Meaning Pluto TV the first with Slater, and also you can listen to the Slater show. And I want to thank the fine people of San Diego for listening to this show on KFMB. You guys are great. We are so honored. Even producer Mark was excited when we picked up San Diego. That says a lot.
It's a great place to be in. I mean, San Diego's a big market, and we're happy to be in any market, really.
Exactly.